And look at that. Just like that, we're live. It's been forever. Welcome back to Big Board. Had a shower. That's a good thing. Good to see everybody. I know that'll probably be a very small audience this morning, but I appreciate all those who are joining us, both on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm doing live stream to both. Simulcast, I guess would be the right terminology. So hopefully it's all popping in. I've got the YouTube chat up on another screen to my right here, which may be your left, I don't know. And we'll kind of keep track of that. We'll see what happens. And let's see. So I wanted to talk, and I don't know how long we'll do this for. I might get bored. You might get bored. I don't know. But I want to go through the list of games I've played over the last couple of months. I'm trying to get back into regular gameplay, number one, regular writing and posting, number two, and then number three, putting some extra video stuff up because it's been a quiet handful of months. Lots going on here with trying to build a house and worky things and life stuff. So complicated days. But anyway, so thanks for joining. I can see we've got 3 or 4 folks across the 2 different platforms. That's about usual for me. Not the most popular channel in the world, but we're here and we're not going anywhere. So let's talk about games. So the first thing that I got excited about in May was that Counter-Strike, and I keep looking up. I've got another screen up here. I've got the Board Game Geek logged games that I've played. So if you feel like I'm not paying attention to you, it's actually because I'm reading crap off my other screen. So anyway, say hi if you're here. Let me know who's joined us so that I can be polite and say hello to all of you. All right, so Counter-Strike, 4th Armored Division versus Panzer Lehr along the Saar River. I actually had 3 efforts with that system, the GTS system. You had to own the rules and that sort of fun stuff, which is fine. Hey, Haro, good to see you. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I like this T-shirt. It was given to me by Vento Nuovo, the war game company from Italy. They have a new game coming out, actually. I don't know if anybody knows that, but they've got a Kickstarter coming up shortly for a new East Front title. And that will be very exciting. I haven't had the time to dig into it with Emanuele, but it looks like it's going to be fun. And anyway, this was Kiev 41, one of his other titles that I quite enjoyed, and they sent me a T-shirt, which I thought was cool. So anyway, so I was playing GTS, and I think for me, I really like the production values of the little mini magazine module that they released. I think it's a great way for folks to get engaged in the system and learn the system in a manageable size and for a manageable cost too, because the other smaller game, the Bastogne one, I think is over $100, and it's expensive to get into if you're not going to enjoy the system. But the magazine Counter-Strike from Multiman Publishing, I think is a great opportunity for folks. If you're interested in exploring GTS, this is the way to go, right? GTS briefings #1, I think it is. So for me, I had some issues with line of sight stuff and some of the sequencing. I obviously bug it up. I got a lot of comments when I was posting video about it and writing about it that I was wrong, and I was wrong. So that's a thing. But nevertheless, I enjoyed the gameplay. I just don't know that I get it. That I get it from the sense that I appreciate what I'm playing, and I don't know that I want to put the effort into doing that. Hey, good morning, Jeff. Good to see you. So I'm still undecided after all this time. I've messed around with this. I've played the Mercury system a little bit. I played that module. What's it called? Operation Mercury or something. I've played. And in fact, I have a copy of it here in a Ziploc baggie, but it's all moldy. I think the guy ended up refunding me the money because it was in terrible shape. Maps all torn and stuff. So I might play with that at some point. But I've played the Normandy beaches landings, the British beaches stuff. I struggled with that, and my gameplay partner struggled with that as well. Just from the extremely fiddly nonsense that goes on with the landings. We're more interested in, hey, what's the next day? But you can't really do that with those with the scenarios because back in the day, and I really didn't pay a lot of attention to scenario setup details per se, particularly for that portion of time. Anyway, I've also played, what's the other one? Oh, Montelimar. I've played that. And I played the little, the Russian front one as well. So I've got some gameplay, guided gameplay, mind you, where I've got people who are telling me what to do and how to do it. This is me truly understanding what's going on there. Yeah, and then there you go. John O'Reilly just nailed it, right? So look, there's things, and John, if you're on Facebook, you might be able to see that. But John says, let me bring it up on the screen. This is one of the challenges, right? I think I like the new assault rules a lot better. As I mentioned, I had some awkwardness with opportunity fire and line of sight. I had some challenges with that, and yes, that's the one. Haro, thank you. Nova Risk. I was going to call it the little something or other, but I forget. Anyway, it's all good. Yeah. So suppression is suppression, and it is what it is. Hey, Martin Spetz, good to see you, my friend. You've been playtesting a lot of games and getting a lot of gaming done lately. Martin's on Facebook for the YouTubers that can't see him. But nevertheless, so I actually got 3, I'll call it full plays, probably 2.5 really, because in between the sort of partial mix-ups and then restarts and stuff like that. I think that was a little bit of fun, but ultimately I'm still undecided how we do this. Hey, Brendan, good to see you. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. So good question, Brendan. GTS is company scale, so individual units are companies, and then you've got divisions on the board with command chits and command points, I should say, that are used to activate by chits to go into the activation pool and bring them onto the board. So you're going to have divisions, not bring them on the board, but activate them on the board. So you're going to have divisions of units on the map, broken down to the company scale and sometimes smaller. But generally speaking, that's relatively unique, I think, when it comes to that scale. The only other company scale game where the units are companies that I'm aware of is Red Winter. Now, there may be other games. I know like Panzer Command from way back in the day and stuff like that, which is what GTS is kind of built on top of, basically. But don't listen to me. What would I know, right? So I think anyway. So that's the scale, mate. And as for hex scale, I couldn't tell you. I forget. I want to say it's 250 meters a hex, but I could be very wrong with that number. Someone else could probably tell us. Maybe it's 500 meters a hex. I have no idea. In fact, do I have? And I wouldn't be able to find it anyway for me to look it up because it's in the magazine bag. Okay, let's see what else we got here. All right, so that's that. So it's interestingly enough, I played a lot of MMP titles this month now as I look at my my list up here. So more recently, around the anniversary of Gettysburg, I had Last Chance for Victory on the table, primarily because we're doing some learning gameplay so that later this year, we can run a. Hi, Kai. Good to see you. Kai is on YouTube with us, so welcome. Learning scenarios so that we can play full battle later this year. I think in October is when the con is that I'm going to. And so I've been doing a little bit of vassal play, which I haven't really posted about because I haven't had, it's only been like one session. I think we'll do 2 more before we get started. But I set up the Peachtree Orchard scenario, got stuck into that, played that twice actually, and enjoyed that immensely. Similar issues with GTS, funnily enough, in that I just had some line of sight challenges, and I was misreading the rules around when you get down to, I think it's either under 5 hexes or 4 hexes. There's a different application of the line of sight rules than if you're looking at longer distance stuff. And if I'm going to lose my voice, it's going to be a very short video. So let's see if we can fix that. All right. So I love the way Last Chance for Victory plays out. Its order system. I like the kinetic action that goes on with the way that charges work, and the melee resolution, and the artillery and all that sort of stuff. When you start layering in across a large battle, it becomes a pretty significant effort, but I think that's fine. There's no issues for me with that. I think it's equivalent in terms of my appreciation for American Civil War combat, if I could put it that way, or military affairs. I would say at the tactical level, it and Herman Luttman's Blind Sword series, where he did A Fearful Slaughter. Was it A Fearful Slaughter? A Fearful Sacrifice? I've got it right here somewhere. I always mess up the name and he yells at me. Anyway, you know, the Flying Pigs game that just came out that everyone's raving about. Amazing game. Really great game. Very, very approachable. Very chaotic. Really captures the chaos of the battlefield, I think, probably more so than any other game system, including line of battle. Highly recommend that. And in fact, I'm hoping to try and get that on the table at some point this year for a smaller scenario. But I'm wary of doing that right leading up to going to this con and then having to try and unremember rules and rule systems and keep them straight. Let's see who's here. Kai is here, and Martin going to be getting in a final playtest of. Oh yeah, okay, value, cool. All right, well, yeah, I'm super excited about that game. You and I think that's the same one that we played a year ago in a little playtest, which I found very interesting and very approachable, and in fact, in some ways, very limited. But in some ways, obviously reminds me of Battles in the East. Pardon the dog drinking water in the background. In terms of its gameplay and its approachability and all the rest of it, built on similar systems, right? So they're both Victory in the West oriented systems. So thank you for sharing that, Martin. Let's see, DAC 2. So I put DAC up mainly because I was struggling with enthusiasm for gameplay and enthusiasm for learning anything new. And so I wanted to just put something up and play it and play 9 or 10 turns and see how it went. And it was great. I hadn't had DAC on the table in several years. Obviously played a lot of OCS over the last few years, but hadn't really got DAC up. So, good African theater stuff. So the operational combat system, just serious. I just love I love it, warts and all, right? Because I've played enough of it now, and mostly in Eppley, like whenever I play opposed, it's a tragic thing. But I enjoy playing solo with that system just because it's so big and wonderful and interesting. So played the first LMAin battle, 9 turns. It's a chance for Rommel to try and break through the defenses in the first battle in that sort of more narrow corridor as you're approaching deep in Egypt, as you're approaching Alexandria. And it was a lot of fun. Both sides got to do a little bit of attacking. There was a lot of tension around. The victory conditions are pretty tight for both sides. Both sides, you have to avoid the British Commonwealth, I should say, have to avoid allowing the Germans to capture their objectives, which are a set of ridge lines, and hexes. One hex along the coast, which is Alamein. And then I'm going to butcher that. I think it's Ruaset or Ruaset Ridge. You need to capture those hexes. I think there's either 2 or 3 hexes there. And then I should have had my screen share organized so that I could pop images up from the gameplay while we were doing this. If I was organized, we'll do that next time. So we will. Let's see. So that was fun. It ended up, and so the Commonwealth have to avoid that result, is where I was getting to, and then but they also then have to control certain other hexes as well, and so it really it has a little bit of a push me pull you effect for the Commonwealth, because they've got a lot of stuff they have to do. They've got to prevent the Germans from doing their thing, and also keep control of these other hexes. And so then the Germans are like, well, okay, if I can't win, if I prevent the Commonwealth from keeping their hexes they must keep, I can get some sort of marginal victory. So there's a little interplay going on there that I quite liked, and I like the fragility of both sides. There were not a lot of steps to go around, despite the fact that all the brigades had 2 steps in that game. And it was pretty deadly. There were a lot of German units taking step losses, and a lot of British units got wiped out. But I ended up calling it on turn 7 calling it a draw, just because there was not much was going to happen. Both sides. It ended up for me anyway. When things start to sort of bog down in OCS. There's a tendency in my gameplay that for me as the defender to put a lot of units in reserve to do artillery barrages to disrupt the largest attacking stack that I can see. And then the opponent, the attacker, they have a tendency then also to put units into reserve to potentially support those attacks or be used for breakthrough. And then they use their air and their barrages to knock the enemy defenders out of reserve, as well as DGing the hexes they want to attack, right? So what I ended up having was just a lot of units with DGs on them, and it all kind of ground to a halt, which felt pretty right, I guess, just based on my limited knowledge of that first battle there. So I enjoyed that significantly. So that was cool. I'm just looking down here to see if we've got any other comments that we need to deal with. Nope, we're good. All right. So I see we've got a few other people joining in. If you are just joining in, please say hi, just so we can recognize you and all the rest of it. There's just a dozen of you here at the moment across the 2 channels. So just so everyone knows, we're just having a quick chat about my gameplays over the last couple of months and some observations. They're not reviews or anything like that. They're just personal observations. So we're doing that until you get bored or I get bored or we both get bored. And let's see, I've got a handful of games here. So we've talked about briefly, for those that just joined us, or a couple of people just pop in, Strike, Counter-Strike, and Last Chance for Victory. And I think what I'll do now, I'm going to skip Battles in the East, and we talked about DAC just now. But I'm going to talk about, let's get the ugly out of the way. Hannibal, the Italian campaign. I really struggled with that thing. I only played it once, and I didn't play a full game because it was just a beatdown. This is an older game that had some flaws that really needed a rules update and some thought put into the campaign and how the game played and all the rest of it. And despite my pleasure, I like Steve Newberg. I think it's Steve who did the design or the reboot. They certainly fixed all of the errata that needed to be fixed, but just the breakdown, the breakdown units meant that you were taking bigger losses than you needed to. The way combat worked was clunky, and the maps were fugly, and it really just, I couldn't recommend it to anybody to play if you wanted to explore the Italian campaign from Hannibal's viewpoint. It was not a fun experience. It was so limited in its enjoyment that I don't know that I did any video, and if I did, I may have deleted it, and I took a handful of pictures and posted them, but I'm not even going to waste time writing stuff up. So that's all I have to say about that. Let's see. So Brendan Clark has got a couple other comments here. Oh, yeah. Okay. You saw those pictures. Well, good. Thanks, Brendan. I'm glad you like those. All right. I managed to sneak in a play back maybe in May or early June of Last Stand, The Battle for Moscow. And I played the second scenario out of that game and really enjoyed it. I still feel like the Germans kind of have the upper hand in that game or that game system. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. It may be because I'm playing it solo and, you know, I'm giving them an artificial advantage in some way, shape, or form. But it feels like that the forces in Last Stand for Moscow, which is also another MMP game, I've been on a bit of an MMP tear lately, was easy for, or relatively easy for, the Germans to achieve their objectives by using the rules against the Russians, in the sense that if you had one of the rules for reinforcements for the Russians is that they need to enter with they need to be more than a certain number of hexes. And I can't recall because this is like 60 days ago, right? So I'm getting freaking old. I can't remember my last name, let alone the specific rules for a scenario. But there was a rule in there that said, I believe, you needed to have units enter either on a rail line or a road line or into a town that were 4 hexes or more, or 3 hexes or more, or whatever the number is, away from a German unit. And so what I did with the Germans was just push up as close as I could and force all of the Russian reinforcements to come in one particular area where I had then made it relatively difficult for the Russians to do much damage. Now, admittedly, there were some nice counteroffensives by the Soviets as they attacked back, trying to push back from Tula, push back from Tula, and then push back from the southern portions or the southwestern portions of Moscow. And they did some pretty good jobs with their Kadies. They've got these little Kadie counters, the Katiushka rocket barrages that you can play. I think there's just 2 or 3 of them that you can use. And those, combined with some attacks, managed to beat up fairly heavily on the German units. But I tended to, with this scenario, I tended to focus on a different portion of the map to scoop up some VPs and allow the Germans to get what I would call probably an operational victory. I don't remember the victory conditions specifically, but they captured enough. They took Tula, took some other areas, locked up a lot of units in and around the sort of fortified lines around Moscow, and took a lot of losses, but managed to beat on the Soviets pretty handily. It's a tough game, I think. Tough game for the Russians to play. It's a tough battle anyway, right? So, but certainly much less of a beatdown than, say, Operation Typhoon, which everyone seems to love that game, and I've played it 5 or 6 times and 2 or 3 times opposed, and I don't find any joy in playing the Germans because it's almost impossible to make any headway, let alone any historical headway. And then the waves of Russian reinforcements that come on just mean that it's absolutely not going to happen in terms of any ahistorical result, which is okay. But I think you need to have at least some glimmer of hope as an opponent, if you're playing the Germans, that you could get something better than the historical result. But with a good Soviet player, you're not getting anywhere near a result, particularly when you're doing the chit pull to pull the strength chit for, let's say, the Das Reich counters, and you do a chit pull, and it's an A class unit, and you can get what's the strength range for that? I think it's something like from 7 to 14 or 12, and you pull a 7, and you're like, oh geez, okay, so Das Reich is done. I ain't going nowhere. So that can really be a bit of a beatdown. It'd be interesting maybe to play Operation Typhoon and just my chair here, cross my leg. I've been doing a lot of exercise the last 2-3 weeks, and it's my body hurts. So that Operation Typhoon, if you pull the wrong chit, I think it'd be fun to try and set the game up so that maybe some of the core armored divisions, if we could find out roughly what their actual strength was and capability was at the point in time that the scenario takes place, and then just give them the chit, right? Germans, and then let's have the Russians be somewhat random, because they were somewhat kind of cobbled together, and who knows who was going to be strong when and where. I think that might be a little bit more interesting than pulling a 4 combat factor strength when you were looking for a 12. That kind of sucks. All right, so I played that, and just the one time, and then I got as I was going through my Mojo rebuild, I went to tried and true favorites, Lock and Low Tactical, pulled out the Falklands, played 2 scenarios out of that. There's a nice little module expansion kit, if you don't know about it, that is called, I should be wearing my glasses, but it's Lock and Low Tactical, A Feat of Arms, and it's an expansion for the Falklands campaign, Falklands module for Lock and Low Tactical, which is a great module, by the way, one of my favorites for the moderns in their system. And the scenarios are reboots of some of the original scenarios with a more historically accurate setup, number 1, order of battle, number 2, and victory conditions, number 3. And so they may end up being slightly more lopsided in their gameplay, but they give you a little bit more of a reflection of the historical stuff that went on. Keep in mind that 99% of all these tactical games, when they set up a scenario, generally speaking, it's maybe from the 26th of June in 1943 or 1985 or 1914 or whatever. Most of these battles are representative. They're not accurate. And I'm going to have to let that dog out, otherwise he's going to pee. Stand by. I'll be back. Want to go outside? Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Good boy. All right. Okay. So anyway, where was I? Talking about representative results or representative scenario design. So you got to take all that with a grain of salt. I think, I know, I'm sure folks will probably correct me in that ASL presents everything 100% accurate, although I'm pretty sure it's not, but that's okay. The historical modules may be the standard representations of ASL scenarios are just that. They're estimates or approximations that are hopefully well balanced. And Lock and Load is no exception to that, nor is Last 100 Yards, et cetera, et cetera. So there you have it. I just noticed that my little icon on the top, I guess maybe it's the top right of the screen for you guys. Let me see if I can actually see this video here. I guess I can't. Yeah, it is the top right side. So there's no words that say the big board. It's just a groovy little picture. Oh well, that's my logo. Never mind. All right, so I enjoyed playing that. Now let's, and I would highly recommend to you if you play tactical war games. There are two. Well, there are so many that are good though, right? So like I love the lock and load stuff. So if you like tactical World War II, certainly give them a run for their money. Certainly give old school tactical a run for their money. And then Last 100 Yards is good but different. And certainly they're probably my top 3 World War II systems. But I'll say that I prefer Lock and Load Tactical Modern over the World War II stuff, just because I'm just not as interested in World War II from that scale with that system. No particular reason why, just it's never really resonated with me. I've always found the modern stuff. Maybe because I learned on the modern stuff, that's why I got excited about it. All right, let's see. So that brings us to the last topic I want to talk about, or the last product that I played, Battles in the East. And I bought both the volumes because, why not? And it's, it's interesting that when you read about its history, and I'm actually going to read from the rule book versus me trying to paraphrase, so everyone knows that I'm not just making this shit up. What else is new? But let's see. Yeah, here's what I want to talk about: the game mechanics, right? And here's what it says in the introduction. The game mechanics are an evolution of the SPI Classics Army Group South and Panzer Group Guderian, and these have been updated and incorporate later game mechanics such as SPI's Cobra. The rules are divided into a common set of series rules and module rules, yada yada yada. So I guess there's a split here at some point where PGG, Panzer Group Guderian, evolves or morphs into Victory in the West. And I would now need to jump on a keyboard and check dates to validate or verify what the first Victory in the West module was. But when I look at the evolution of that mechanic where it was move in combat with overrun, and then a second mechanized move, and then the German, then the opposing player, like the Russians in this case, do their thing. That to me is sort of the precursor to Victory in the West, because Victory in the West used a very similar model, except that it had randomized troop strengths. And I kind of look at them as a continuum, and I get a lot of pushback on that, but that's how it feels to me. They have similar rules around locking zones of control. You move into a zone of control, you're stuck. Right, and that's a big thing in this game. It's a key mechanism for both sides to use, because you can't disengage unless you are retreating or advancing after combat or are eliminated. So it makes a big difference. My point about all that is that Battles in the East is a lovely representation of, without the randomized chip pull for strength, although there is a randomized die roll for strength for some reinforcements, not all. There are some aspects of untried capability for the Russians. The Germans come on as they come on, and they have the strength they have, and that is what it is. So it has this lovely simple. So this game has this lovely built-in simple combat system, simple set of DRMs and column shifts, uses mechanics that you're going to be ultimately very familiar with, because it's kind of the classic 70s, 80s, or say 80s gameplay here. And now I've got comments. I'm just trying to... yes, I'm seeing this. This is very cool. Yes. And Martin, yes. So there we go. 78 was the first. Okay. So I'm glad we mentioned that earlier on. So if you're watching the video earlier on, I was talking about Operation Typhoon. So that's a great tip. Thanks, Martin, for correcting me. Any chance you'll talk about the data analysis word charts you did for your collection this week? Oh yeah, we can do that. I might even be able to pull the app up here real quick. So, but okay, before I get distracted, let me finish talking about this. But before I do that, I'm going to find the app. Can I find the freaking app? Fastest way to do that is to go to Facebook and look at the post I made, and I will see if I can find this real quick. Stand by. Just bear with me. It's going to be here somewhere. I'll tell you whoever this big board guy is. He posts a lot of stuff. Most of it's garbage. Where is it? Did I not post a link at all for any of this? Here we go. We're getting closer now. There it is, Geek Group. All right. Now I've got it up on the screen. I will be able to tell you a little bit more about it. Okay. So this system, this game, everyone has said $100. It's expensive. It's a lot for 2 scenarios, and I think they're right. However, there appears to be from this gameplay that I'm now on turn 6, and I'm going to say that based on it being a 10-turn scenario, that this scenario is over. The Germans have won what I would call almost an overwhelming strategic victory in the victory conditions. They're gonna win pretty handily. You know, I may have made 1 or 2 errors in some of the gameplay, which may have given the Germans a slight advantage in 1 or 2 attacks. However, I also screwed up as the Germans and had to delay the reinforcements for a turn because of the Soviet push in one area. So I would call it a wash in terms of fubas to unbalance the game. But nevertheless, we got to the point where in turn 6, we're done. We know that the Germans are going to win, and I'm not going to waste valuable time playing stuff out to see if the Russians can recover, because the Russians really don't have very limited capacity to fight back. So coming back around to value for money for this particular system, first of all, the boxes are beautiful. They're extremely well structured boxes. The artwork on them is great. The rules, full color, good. Mounted maps. They're double-sided mounted map, I should say, one map. I'm ambivalent about the artwork. I'm not a super. I think it's trying to harken back to some of the earlier games, perhaps, from the era. But I'm a huge fan of the artwork on the map. Necessarily, the color of the color of the white hexes has almost a dirty feel to it, like a dirty white, and it just, I don't want it to be bright white, but it just doesn't. It didn't really resonate with me one way or the other. It was just kind of, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, it works. Functional, very functional. That's all good. Counters. We've got nice size counters. I don't know if it says the size. I always forget this 5/8. All this. I have metric. I've got metric in my head these days, and I've not been able to come back to inches and things. But I think they're 5/8. Possibly, right? They're certainly not standard sized counters. They're larger. They're larger counters. Great fonts, good artwork. Everything's all NATO symbol. There's no tanky bits on it, so you'll like that if you're not into silhouettes. And as I said, the rules are good. The charts are good. Charts are very clear. The only thing that's not on a chart that I refer to on a regular basis is the stacking and division core integrity chart here. This guy, because I keep forgetting how many regimental equivalents are allowed to be on a stack, in a stack, I should say. And it's 4.5. Axis division is 3. A Soviet infantry division is only 2, which is interesting. Oh, that's because they're smaller. That's right. Soviet mountain division is 1.5 Rs. Soviet armor, mech, cavalry, or rocket division is 1. And then regular, so then you get into basically the German units. All the brigades and regiments for the Germans are 1 Re. That means you can stack 4 units, basically. Although there are German Kampf groups, and there as well. HQs are a half, so you can stack 4 units. And an HQ. You probably never, well, there may be, I don't know, there may be formations that have 4 units in them. There are divisions that have 4. I think some of the Panzer divisions might have that, so that's where that comes from. So then stack an HQ with it if you want to do that, I guess you can. So the neat thing for me was a simple but effective combat mechanic, an interesting scenario design, a really well thought out scenario design in there. And here's where the value comes in. It's going to be that replayability, right? It's going to be the, excuse me, it's going to be the ability to jump in, play the game, try different strategies. There are a number of different ways you can skin this cat. But the scenario design specifically for the scenario I'm playing, which is Uman Pocket, is excellent in that it suspends the core system series rules for disengagement, which if you recall earlier on, I was talking about how in Panzergruppe Guderian and in Victory in the West, I believe that's the way that works as well, if I recall correctly, that once you're in a zone of control, you're stuck in a zone of control unless you receive a combat result that makes you move out in one way or another. So they suspend that key rule for the first 3 turns, and this gives both the Soviets and the Germans an opportunity to be a little bit more dynamic. And there's also a special rule for allowing the Russians to retreat more aggressively, so they can double their movement, but no combat, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, you've got to be retreating. You can't advance. Well, I don't know. Maybe you could. Maybe you could gain the system and advance, but I don't think you can. I think you have to move in whatever direction they need to go, east or whatever the case may be, right? So, so that level of thoughtfulness about the scenarios makes the game much more interesting. If they had just dumped, here's all the units on a map with the series rules as is, and here's your VP locations, go have at it, you would have had a really shitty experience, to be perfectly frank, and it would not be fun. But I'm going to reach over and grab this. Let's see if I can get this. I'm trying not to put my ass on the screen. I think I may have. All right. So there are these nice little scenario cards that go through the setup, the introduction, what was going on, additional changes to the series rules. So there's changes to the supply as well, just to keep everything kind of tight for both sides. And it restricts the Germans, and obviously showing the Germans being at the end of their supply chain, and life is logistically difficult. So there's a limit to the number of formations that can be either in attack supply. And if you've watched any of the videos that I've posted recently, I discussed the whole concept around attack supply and general supply. But everyone's in general supply if they can trace a line of supply, either to a HQ or to board edge or whatever. Attack supply, you have to dedicate, say I've got X number of attack supply markers. This Panzer Corps or 11th Army or Russian Army is going to be in attack supply this turn. They get to do all the things that you're allowed to do in attack supply, and without me telling you all those things, that is how they mitigate the ability to just run amok and do whatever you want, right? So nice setup details and that's the reinforcement charts. Actually, that's not the reinforcement. Yes, it's reinforcements and setup on there, and then so that that suspension I was telling you about of disengagement. Suspending that for 3 turns really gives the whole historical vibe for what went on at Uman Pocket, and I think it's was particularly interesting. Then they talk about weather. They talk about one of the Russian leaders whose name I'm not going to. Budioni. He can move around, do his thing at certain points. 11th Army can only be so far away from the Nesta River, and they've got to exit on a certain turn or by a certain turn, or if they don't, the Germans lose a VP. Talks about these untried units that I mentioned here, where you roll a die to see whether you get unit. You flip the unit over and take whatever value that is, or you will put a counter on the map for it. Yeah, and that counter will have two values, so you may put it on the higher or the lower. So there are three chances for you to get a certain result. Right, there was that. There's NKVD discussions, and there's these goofy little railroad units, which are annoying, but whatever. And then there's some optional units you can bring into the map, onto the map, which are going to cost you VPs. So for $100, you get two scenarios, but you get very, very high production values overall, I will say, and a very clear, concise set of rules. And if they can produce these games, cool if they could do what GMT does, right? And offer you a paper map or an upgrade to a mounted map. And then you could potentially save a lot of money on the purchase price and be on the shipping, right? So, I don't, do I like the mounted map? Sure. Yeah. No skin off my nose one way or the other, whether it's mounted or paper. In my current living circumstances, I'm just looking at the map now. In my current living circumstances, I don't have Plex, so I can't put it over paper maps, and it's a bit annoying that I can't do that. And that's purely because I don't want to go buy any more when I have literally 20 sheets of it in storage somewhere. So, and I can't get to it. So we're managing. So the amount of map in this case has been wonderful. All right, so let's look at. I'm trying to see if we had any other comments here. Kai, I'm going to come to you in a second with your comment here. Yeah, and look, and this is a really good point that Jeff makes. I have been underwhelmed, as I think everyone has, except for the diehard fanboys, with not only the magazine games that have been coming out recently, but I stopped buying them a long time ago. But the game releases have been nothing short of what I would call, let's be nice, let's call them average at best. I'm looking at Wellington's victory, shaking my head going, how did that happen? How did you take something that was so amazing? Well, it wasn't amazing. I guess Wellington's victory wasn't amazing, but you re-released a game that has no relationship to the original Wellington's victory. Big disappointment to me. And I think that's been a common theme with DG, where it's really kind of a, let's just push shit out the door and hopefully it'll sell. And they're not producing a whole lot of games in any case. So I don't know how they're staying in business. I guess it's all magazine subscriptions, but this could be a turning point. And I think they have Anthony Burkett to thank for that because he has done a great job. Christopher Cummins was on the development. And Chris has worked on, not War in the Pacific, but that Rommel Desert Fox big update, whatever that was. And that's kind of a shit show as well. So I don't know. So somehow this game managed to survive the DG boogeyman from messing things up. So it's a good sign for them. John Longshore, sir, good to see you. I have not seen you in forever. I hope you are well. Right, let's have a look at this geek group thing. So folks are asking me, what is it? It's literally just an app that there's a board game geek guild that you can join that will help you learn how to use the app. I have not done that yet. I am going to try and type this in here on my screen here. And potentially we'll share screen. I wonder if I can just, this is not going to let me. Oh, here we go. No, I think that's going to be. Shouldn't have it saved here. Let's have it saved. How about that action? All right. I must have used this on this PC. Let's see if I can share this screen with you, and we'll just have a look. I'm certainly by no means an expert in this little app, but it's pretty cool. Let me leave studio. We don't want to do that. We might want to present. Here we go. We're going to share a screen. We're going to share the Geek group, probably in an application window. Nope, that's not a good idea. How about this tab? I'll share it this way. Now, I don't know what the visibility is like for you, but if you can, someone can give me some feedback on what they can and can't see, that'd be great, because often the resolution on StreamYard for screen sharing is miserable. Martin Spetz, I have not, and I'm open to suggestions, but given my feelings about Desert Fox, I was not. I want to revisit Desert Fox, but I'm not in a hurry to do it. It'll be one of those things I do before I die. All right, so so this app, you put your BGG username in, create an account, put a password in, all that sort of fun stuff. It's going to populate your stack of stuff. It's going to tell you all your games. So I own apparently 376 games. I can look at, I guess that's going to be a number of plays, the time. This is kind of like, just take it. It's just scraping BGG stats, basically. But there are some interesting, let's see if we can look at some of the, well, that's going to be my ratings. That's going to be horrible. Plays, lists, insights. Here we go. I think this is what we want. Insights. So here, I can have a general view and look at a breakdown of my different collection statuses, what I own versus previously owned. You know, people always say this. They're like, "Oh, look, you've sold 420 games or passed on 420 games." Yeah, I have. I own 376. I have owned, so I've owned 790 games. That's outrageous. I do have 105 up for trade, but I don't have access to them all at the moment, so I'm not really actively trading. We can look at which games I've played the most, own the least of most of, complexity weightings here, games that I own by publishing year. Durations, I guess, is play duration. Language, whatever. Designers, which designers do I own the most of? Obviously, Dean Essig being a fan favorite. Yeah, got a link. It's literally geekgroup.app. I'm going to put it into the chat now. Stand by. Geek Group. I went to both Facebook and to YouTube. So I don't know if you saw it. I'm now not able to see what I'm showing you because I'm on the app, the Geek Group app screen, but you can see the number of publishers, categories, and mechanics. Now, keep in mind, this is not 100% accurate. So it's pulling Board Game Geek data, right? So it's calling certain games political when they're not. So like, for instance, if we go down to mechanics here, can I pull this list up? Let me see if I can do this. Grid move. Okay, so these are all accurate, but there's one in here that said here. Let's just do the full list. It said political. Where is it? Area movement events and the games it had in political. So look, interesting. You know, I own 7 point-to-point games. I'd actually probably say I own less than that, but whatever. Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding Prisoner's Dilemma. Yeah, all these categories. A lot of these are just Euro stuff, right? Worker placement. I own one worker placement game. Get out. What is that? Oh, table battles. See, so that's just wrong, right? This is so wrong, and that's just BGG, which just makes a lot of this statistical analysis or assessment kind of just bogus nonsense. Table battles is not a worker placement game, and I can't even imagine why or who gave it that tag, right? You're a dumbass if you did, because it's just not that, right? Oh, Shelf of Shame. Let's have a look at that. That'll be fun. A summary of your shelf. Note all shelf data is tracked and calculated by Geek Group, so only games on your shelf since you started. Oh, okay. 824 average days on the shelf. That's just so rude. It is so rude. I have no idea how to assess what that is. Recently played, so we can see. Oh, I don't know. What did I? Now, why didn't that come up? We should have. Oh, because it was April. That's why. I was just looking back at May, June, and July. Do you want to go out, Kat? Really? Yeah. Come on. Cat in. Cat out, dog in. And you know what? I can put this up to full screen, I think, too, can't I? So maybe I should do that. I haven't seen any comments about the. That might be better to view. Hang on one second here. I base my collection on palette size and weight. Yes, you're always the funny guy. Dip Gamer, good to see you. Not sure I don't know who Dip Gamer is, but welcome. I wonder if he dips while he games. Let's see what else we can see here. I'm using the zoom, pinch zoom on my screen here. Shelf size, that's all nonsense. Gathering dust. Ooh. Chariots of Fire. Yeah, I have not played that son of a bitch. I've never played Soviet Dawn. I haven't played any of these. Are all games I haven't played yet. I got to get to those. In particular, these 3 TCS titles, I'm keen to get Black Wednesday to the table, most of all, then secondarily GD41. Familiar faces. What is this? What is this number? Those whose games have spent the most cumulative time on my shelf. Yeah, well, it's really kind of irrelevant, isn't it? So that's interesting. Size. Oh, that's embarrassing. Wow, I didn't realize I had that many games. Well, good news is I've sold a lot of games. How about that? Activity. When is this? 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, this is really interesting because it only goes back to 2020. Oh, it's a shame. I, in the past, have played the last 3 years have seen me play a lot less than I usually do. We'll just put it that way. I used to be doing 30 or 40 new games a year, net new games, and I'm down in the 15, 20, 25 range now. So that's when you added a number of games over a short period of time. I think this is just that spurts thing is just a bit of nonsense there. All right. Let's see how long games stay in my shelf. I keep a game for about 3 years unless I turn them over, right? I'm not sure what. So look, there's a lot of interesting data in here, and I used to use the Friendless Stats site, and I believe that this actually has more interesting data. Ratings general, plays general. And I can't imagine Streaks and Records is going to have a lot of stuff in it. Yeah, this is a heat map of number of plays of games, and I bet you if we click these, it's going to bring up the ones I've played the most or the least. as the case may be. I'm sorry if that's zooming around too much for you. Activity. Yeah, so I'll just give you a timeline here where you can see all the games you've played. It's just pulling my my logging, because I log most of my gameplays pretty strictly. I try and do that just so it's interesting at the year end to see what's going on. And then back to the main screen. So anyway, look, without laboring the point on that, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts or comments or questions on that. All right. So look, there you have it. So I just want to give you guys a quick update on what was going on. Gameplay, my head's in a much better place for gameplay at the moment. I'm hoping that it stays there. And I'm keen to begin posting and writing a little more. It's just a function of time at the moment. So I am leaning in very heavily on shorter videos, up to 10 minutes. I'm trying to restrict most of my gameplay video comment to that. When I get into game systems that I am very comfortable with, and I have a better connection, when I have a better connection, I will certainly get back into doing some live streaming of gameplay, because I know a lot of folks had appreciated that or liked it or enjoyed seeing me mess up on a regular basis. But it's also just fun to see how a game is played, or at least see how one person interprets the rules. So looking forward to doing some more of that. I will also just put a tiny little plug in here and say I do have a Substack where I'm doing narrative writing, although I haven't published anything in a couple of months. I am working on some stories and articles that are all based off of my gameplay, and I'm trying to do some character generation and commentary and do a little bit of narrative writing. It will ask you to subscribe, and it will ask you to pay money, but you don't have to. So please don't. It's a handful of you have actually subscribed and paid me money, and now I feel guilty, like I got to go write something. So I'm working on it, but that's just a little plug for my Substack. I think it's bigboard at Substack, or bigboard.substack.com or something like that. I'll post a link somewhere, but go check it out. You might find a cool story there that is a little bit different from the other stuff that I post on the blog, which you all know is bigboard.com. And that has all of my AARs and all the links to all the videos. And then, of course, there's a YouTube channel. If you can like and subscribe, all that stuff, and love it or whatever, or tell your friend or tell your mom, that'd be cool too. But anyway, thanks for checking in. I'm going to try and do these a little more regularly and just talk in general about the games that I'm playing. When I get 2 or 3 done, I will sit down and we'll have a conversation about them, because I think that generates a lot of comparison and alternate views, and I like to hear your comments on the games as well. And so it sort of validates and verifies that I'm not the only guy seeing how wonderful something is or how bad something is. I didn't really wrap up on Battles on the East. I will say, look, I think it's a little expensive for what you get, but I think there's a lot of replay value there, and I think the series has lots of potential, and I think the quality of components is very high. So it's going to be, can you afford to pay $100 or not? It's up to you. Or buy what's on sale. It's going to be on sale at some point somewhere. So it'll be 30% off on whatever that big site is that everyone goes and buys their games at some point in the future, or you'll pick it up secondhand. Just be patient. You'll get it if you want it, or you won't. All right. All the best. I hope all y'all. Hang on. What we got here? Kai, what are you saying? Need to come up to Dallas for no quarter con in the fall. I have no idea what that is. So send me a PM on Facebook. Don't do it here, because this chat will pretty much disappear. And yeah, thanks, Brendan. Thanks for hanging out with us. And all right, excellent. I think we're all, looks like people are all off having a look at looking at that little app. I hope everyone enjoys it, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Go roll dice. All right, ciao.